My work is at its best when it's as analog as possible. I haven't shed a tear for anything that AI has created yet, so I don't know. I mean, move me and maybe it changes the conversation, but if everything's just gonna be cool, I've seen that. I'm seeing it all the time.
Every now and then, I like to check in on director Salomon Ligthelm. Not only do I super respect how he approaches his craft, I can always count on him to give me his honest point of view.
Some directors need to consciously destroy their image in order for the story that's underneath to really shine through. Otherwise, the story underneath doesn't shine through. The images are doing all the shining.
Today, we're breaking down his recent Super Bowl commercial, as well as the massive 64-page treatment he submitted that won him the job.
In the treatment, I really leaned into a very unique point of view that I wanted to take. You know, that intro and approach section. I don't think I've crafted the words more than I have, because it was one of the closest aspects to my life that I could explore in a commercial. I didn't want to do anything that was part of the American church industrial complex, because that's not what I want to be a part of. If I'm going to make it, I needed to make it in a way that felt really truthful and honest.
Salomon Ligthelm, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. So good to be chatting again.
The one who dies with the most toys wins.
50 million Americans can't be wrong because winning is more fun.
Your smile is brighter than snow.
Look at this amazing demonstration.
I want to feel more beautiful.
In a search that has continued for centuries and its promise of more and more.
I'll be the talk of the town.
You've got to learn to get more pleasure out of this. Get more pleasure out of this.
Here come more daredevil drivers full of fantastic tricks.
This just in. You don't want to be less. A series on the changing American market. Come consumer.
You've got to learn to get more pleasure out of this. Get more pleasure out of this.
Well, Salomon, if there's anyone that I trust to get introspective and philosophical with, it's you. But
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I could just lighten up. But I lighten up when I'm on holiday, but that's about it.
No, I think it's a good thing. I think it's an incredible thing, you know. But I want to take a moment and just zoom in on this really thoughtful campaign you worked on for He Gets Us. As the director, give me a synopsis. I mean, what is this?
What is it? Honestly, that's probably the question a lot of people ask, and they've asked it, you know, the first time this campaign launched 4 years ago. I think people were like, oh, what is this about? Because when these spots come on, particularly at the Super Bowl, there's sort of no obvious sell in the images or in the messaging. So it's only sort of at the end of the films, each one of these films over the last 4 years, that you sort of understand what it's about. I think initially when I was approached for this campaign, I wasn't sure whether I want to engage. I come from, I think we spoke about this, I come from a religious, spiritual background, but I always want the work to sort of the work that I do, I wanted to transcend pure religion, because I think religion has so many connotations and baggage to it. But then my EP at Pretty Bird, she was like, you know what, I think you should look at this. I think you should look at this campaign. She got the boards in, and she was like, I think you'll resonate with what it's trying to communicate. It was very sort of humanist, the intention in the deck that I got. And she was like, I think you can bring a lot of yourself to this. At the time, there were 4 different spots, part of this campaign. More, which is this one that we're currently looking at. B is another one. Do was another one. And Don't was, so those 4 films. And then this additional film got added in called Load of Questions. And I did look at the campaign and I thought, yeah, you know what, this is this is something that I resonate with a lot because it was transcending, in my view, sort of the American church industrial complex. That's sort of how I called it in the treatment. And I didn't want to do anything that was part of the American church industrial complex because that often, there is so much baggage. There is so much nationalism baggage with that I'm like, that's not what I want to be a part of. I do want to be a part of the message that was spoken 2,000 years ago by someone who changed the world. I really believe in that. But if it was going to be anything dogmatic, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So in the treatment, I really leaned into a very unique point of view that I wanted to take, which is I want to sort of look at culture at large, and what I liked about this particular campaign, it wasn't political. Like, I think on both sides of the political aisle, you can go, like, let's look at Moore, for instance. You can go, yeah, man. Like, I just, somebody sent me some comments from New York Times, because this got posted on the New York Times as one of their successful campaigns, I guess, of the year. And like reading the comments of atheists or skeptics going, you know what, I don't really believe in Christianity or religion or anything in particular, but actually I do believe that we have fallen into the trap of excess, and I sort of applaud anyone who's going to take that on and critique that. So the message felt universal in that way, and so there was sort of an entryway that I was like, you know what, I think that it will resonate with people even if they're skeptics or they're not believers, and hopefully that's sort of the door opening for people to go, you know what, let me look into my life and look at where things have just sort of like, I've been on autopilot and just buying and partaking, and maybe there is something deeper calling me, you know, and that's sort of what I got really interested in, and I thought maybe I could lend my voice to this.
This piece for sure has been seen by millions of people, and everyone has thoughts, and it's created some really good discourse. But I think, you know, one of the biggest reasons that it's been seen so much is because it aired during the Super Bowl. I mean, Salomon, you've directed big commercials before. In this case, there's no larger stage in advertising. From a visibility standpoint, this is the ceiling. Did you know while you were making it that this piece was going to be aired in this way, and did that impact how you approached it?
It's a yes and a no. So there were two films that were being considered for the Super Bowl placement. One was More, and the other one was Loaded Questions. So those two films, Loaded Questions, it's not part of this deck. It became sort of an addendum deck because they sort of brought it to us last minute and go, hey, can you also pitch on this? This is another film that we're considering for the Super Bowl. So it was then sort of in editorial where finally the decision was going to be made to which film sort of wins out in terms of that placement spot for the Super Bowl. And Loaded Questions, like, I think is a beautiful film, and it asks very honest, sort of innocent questions in the beginning through the eyes of a baby or through the eyes of a child. The whole film is sort of these questions are asked through the eyes of a child, and they're very innocent, naive questions in the beginning, and then they sort of stack and become a little bit more existential, bordering on spiritual questions by the end. But as we were sort of looking at More and Loaded Questions, it actually felt like More had its pulse on where culture was at a little bit more. And I'm excited about that because I think if you look at some of the previous campaigns that He Gets Us have done, they've been a little bit more like emotional and maybe a bit more classic in their approach, but More felt a little bit more modern in a way. And you're sort of like using the language of culture to subvert it and to critique it. And again, didn't fully know. I mean, the hope was that one of these films, particularly in my case, I was hoping that more actually would go to the Super Bowl, and then and then finally it won out.
Let's get into the technicals a little bit. I mean, your approach to shooting this. I mean, because you got four pieces, different pieces of content, deliverables in the same shoot. Correct? Is that how you guys did it? Five. Yeah. So, what was that like? What did it take? How many days did you shoot? What was the crew like? Where did you shoot? Give me some context.
Yeah, it was. We shot for 7 official days, and then we added 2 smaller days onto it, just so that we had so much to shoot. Like there was, again, five spots, and they weren't 5 sort of like single take or simple setup shots. Like if you look at more, like it's excessive. There are so many scenes. And almost every spot, save for one, is large and sprawling in terms of just how many people we're capturing. I think we had like 140 main talent, and then 300 extras, I think. So it was a big shoot, and so on paper we had 7 days, but in actual fact we had 9. We had 2 down days. We had 5 days shooting, 2 down days, and then another 2 days. And I decided to go take a small crew to the desert on our 2 down days and just go shoot some additional desert stuff. And so that's what you can see in that like frame right there. We shot in LA. It was really important for this film to feel like it's a US feeling film. I mean, certainly more universal than necessarily just US, but I think capitalism can probably have its, and consumerism probably has its sort of like greatest target in the US. So we shot in LA, and part of shooting in LA is also we very much realized that the industry has sort of been suffering, and we wanted to get people to work. Chose LA because great locations, but also crew that I trust, and I can get a lot out of the locations because it's all so compressed and close together, and we needed a great variety of locations in a short traveling distance. Yeah, and we just had the best crew. We shot with Lol Crawley, who was amazing painter with light, incredible collaborator. And we shot on 4-perf Kodak.
American market. Come consumer.
You've got to learn to get more pleasure out of this. Get more pleasure out of this.
The job was so sprawling that there were, like particularly in More and in Loaded Questions, that we had to sort of plug holes. Like More was actually More and Loaded Questions was written with a lot of stock footage in mind, because we wanted to create the sense that this is sort of a reality, a perennial reality, sort of all the world across. And so initially I did an initial cut, and I had 2 days to put a sort of a cut together. But there was literally no time before agency and client had to see it, or agency had to see it. And then there was so many sort of so much time spent trying to get this edit into a shape that felt really interesting. And eventually, I think it was the day before we had to present the client, and the agency had sort of like gone in a direction, and then I had sort of kept in a different direction because we weren't in the same city when we were cutting. And I found the key, which is these audio clips from 1950s infomercials and commercials. And I wanted the imagery to stay really modern, but I wanted the problem to feel perennial. And so these older audio clips mixed with images that felt really modern was like a really nice combination to make the film feel quite modern and contemporary, but still make it feel like the problem of excess and consumerism is, decades, centuries, millennia old. And so that was sort of the key.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sound bites you're using, that's kind of where all of this was born.
And it wasn't the intention. I think when I wrote the treatment, I was like, we initially had Britney's Gimme More track that was going to be the track on top of it, and it was going to tell a lot of the storytelling. And then the reality of like, oh, are we going to get that song started to set in, and then I just started trying to think about it in a different way. How can we still sort of communicate the idea, but do it in a different way? And then finding these audio clips was the linchpin that gave us a fresh way into it.
I mean, I feel like filmmakers scoff at the idea of using stock or someone else's work in theirs. You know, what's your stance here? You know, I think there's a natural and appropriate use of it sometimes personally. This is, to me, an example of that. But where do you stand on that idea?
Yeah, I don't know why people scoff at it. I love it, honestly. Like, I mean, I love shooting as much as I can. That's within sort of my control to create a reality, especially if it's something that feels really tailored and that feels really bespoke, like the B film. Like there's no stock in that. That is completely all shot by us. But for more, like there were just stuff that I wouldn't have access to shoot, you know, with the limited amount of days that we had, and the complexity of some of these bigger scenes that we have that we just wouldn't have had time for. I needed to rely on stock to do it, and I honestly I use it all the time. Like I did it in Riyadh season, I did it in my film Beyond the Endless Light. I use stock footage fairly often. A lot of times I also use stock footage, like you can see there, like we knew that stock footage was going to play a part of it because there was some of the older stock, some of the stuff that feels like it's from the 50s and 60s, like this stuff, that was 100% going to be stock, and you would know that it was stock.
Dude, you're not going to go shoot this on your shoot when you only have so much time and resources for your primary scenes. You know, there's no, it's so totally unfeasible for you to go shoot stuff like this.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where like, well, that stuff exists on Getty, or I think some of that stuff we got from Stalker, or they provided it, and some of the stuff was from Film Supply. And I mean, I love stock for cosmos and textures and the stuff that's maybe not like I want to say narrative specific. It's not a character or storytelling between two people. It's texture to build the world, to build, to three-dimensionalize the space, the location a little bit more. But I have absolutely no problem against stock footage. I think that can be very, very powerful assets. I mean, so many films I've used them.
100%. I feel the same way. I mean, I'm a believer in Film Supply. I've got a lot of my own footage up there. And you're right, like a lot of the stuff that sells are the more textural, the in-between elements, the things that people just don't have the time and resources to go out and shoot every little element.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I've done it honestly since the start of my career. I remember some of the earlier stuff I cut with Prelinger Archives, which is sort of like a royalty-free archive site. It's like Library of Congress is like where you can find still images that are sort of in the public domain, that are like very old, and I've utilized that so many times. And then I did a video maybe 13 years ago called I've Been on This Mountaintop, that basically used the Martin Luther King clip. And all that stock footage that I used was basically super low res stock footage from the Prelinger archives. I've gotten stuff from like NASA's Cassini missions for multiple videos of mine. So I love it. I honestly love the right stock.
Yeah, it has to be the right thing for sure. We touched on it, but I want to dig into the treatment a little bit because this thing is a beefer. I mean, I know you guys were concepting more than one piece here, but we're talking about 64 highly designed, beautiful images talk to me about your process here in writing this one. I mean, you had a team of people helping you with this thing, right?
We always, I think music videos is usually the one space where I'm doing everything from beginning to end, or short films or narrative films. Commercials, you often working with a treatment writer that's helping you out, and a visual research, always visual research. This one is actually one that because it was so personal, I said to the guy that I usually work with, Joshua Sullivan, hey dude, let me just take a stab at all of this. Let me just write it out, because there's so much in here that is it's so unique to my point of view that I'm not expecting someone else to sort of carry for me. I need to attack it. I sort of need to give the first run through that's just raw me, and then it can be polished. But I also then with Joshua, we spent a lot of time polishing it together. But like all the, that intro and approach section, just like how the films, what they mean to me, and then how to approach them. I don't think I've crafted the words more than I have in this than I had with this film, because it was very personal. It's like one of the closest aspects to my life that I could explore in a commercial. So it meant a lot to me that it felt true to, if I'm going to make it, I needed to make it in a way that felt really truthful and honest. And honestly, dude, the biggest thing that I felt, I was maybe also the most anxious with this job, because I so badly did not want to betray the heart behind it. Not just with the films themselves, but also with like how the set was being run, because I was so aware that we had limited time. We're going to see so many people that I just didn't want. The set needed to feel sacred in a way. People's time needed to feel sacred. People's being needed to feel sacred. And if we were just churning and people felt like they were dispensable, then it sort of like runs against everything that this thing is trying to communicate. So
how did you do that? Give me an example of how you protected that on set.
Well, one of the things that I did, which I don't typically do, is on the first day, usually there's like a safety meeting before you start shooting. And the safety meeting is led by the first AD, and he sort of just talks to everyone about the run of the day and how things were going to run. And I asked Jesse Fleece, who was the first AD, I said, look, I don't usually ask this, but do you mind if I just say like a couple of words? And I sort of just set up the idea that we're going to be moving fast, and that invariably there's going to be a lot of stress on the set. But I just said, knowing that I'm going to have to be responsible myself, and that's always the hardest thing when you're asking something of other people. Like, you know that you're going to lose all that trust if you break it yourself. So it's a high wire act of just, the ask was, I know we're going to have to run around and everyone's going to be stressed because we're moving so fast. But I just ask that everyone treats each other with grace, in spite of all the stress that invariably happens when a set is this big and there's so many people involved. Just that's the ask, if everyone can just treat each other with grace. Because, I mean, it would just break me if someone left the set and going, that sucked, that was not a great experience.
No, I mean, dude, I know what this, I think we all know what that set is like. I don't think I've ever walked off a set, but I've certainly wanted to. And as a director, you never want your set to be that set. And
no.
I think that's cool, just getting ahead of it, knowing what the energy was going to be, and then fostering that energy of safety, I think is so important. So important.
Yeah. And the thing is, that actually has to be for every set. That has to be for every set. I would hate if someone feels that way on a set that I'm leading. You know what I mean? It would break me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of breaking, in our past episode, you said that you're not afraid to break the frame. You're not afraid to make a game time decision and say, hey, look, this is what we planned, but this is what we're going to do. What's an example of that on this shoot?
50 million Americans can't be wrong because winning is more fun.
Your smile is brighter than snow.
Look at this amazing demonstration.
I want to feel more beautiful.
In a search that has continued...
Well, I can tell you this much. There is so much that's on the cutting room floor that didn't make it. Because you think, like we had this big scene at a carnival that we sort of built out for a load of questions, and it just didn't make it. I mean, the shoot with the girl in front of the mirror, that was going to be basically one girl doing multiple wardrobe changes, and it was going to be a flutter cut between all. There's sort of a reference for it in the treatment somewhere. That was like, oh, that was sort of the idea. And then we walked into this location, and there were just mirrors everywhere. And we're like, oh, how about if we sort of just change the idea, and it's a bunch of girls in front of mirrors, and they're sort of all taking selfies of themselves. And I was like, that was just the better idea. Like, you did it. There was sort of scale to it. The location was cool. So I want to say it almost happened for everything. Like, I think if you look at the storyboards and you look at what we did, especially for More, you wouldn't recognize the film, because the film was really discovered in the edit. Like, once we found those old 1950s clips, I think this is one of the only scenes that I can literally walk you through this thing and go, oh, that was in the storyboard. That wasn't in the storyboard. That wasn't, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the interesting thing, man, is like, I know when I'm working on a project that I'm shooting something out, and something is in the back of my head telling me that, you know, this may be used in so many different ways I didn't intend, ways that I don't know about yet. You know, and so sometimes that's just the nature of the shoot. Was that just the nature of this shoot?
It was. I mean, I think you get nervous. You get nervous leading up to a shoot, because one of the things that was communicated to me by the agency was we want each one of the 4 films to feel really distinct. And when you're sort of like walking onto 7 days or like 9 days of shooting, and you're shooting this scene for More, and you're shooting that scene for B, and you're shooting that scene for Do, and you're shooting that scene for Don't, and you're shooting that scene for Load of Questions, like this, like crazy. You're not shooting everything for More at the same time, and then going to B. Like, we're in this location jumping around.
How do you do it? How do you wrap your head around that?
Well, I came up with a rule. I came up with a couple of rules. Basically, and if you look at the films, like, More was going to be frantic energy, shot at 24 frames per second. Maybe a couple of images were going to be at like high speed. Do was basically going to be, we start everything in normal speed, basically locked off cameras or dolly moves, and then doing 3 frames per second and 6 frames per second versions of it, because it sort of needed to feel like Keonoscotzi or like Samsara, and it's about people being busy and being in the rat race. More was about excess. So it was so much of it was about what was happening in the frame, shot at real speed or 24 frames per second. And then B was highly stylized, really, really controlled, like 1 to 2 frames per setup. And it was about people finding themselves in societal expectations that's really crushing for them.
Rolling and set and action. Camera.
Light. And we were going to do a moving light gag that as we come from a wide shot, this light gag will come on, the environment light would fade down, and light would come on their faces, and you would sort of see them isolated, feeling the pressure of of them not stacking up to society's expectations. And then you'd come into a close-up to see the person's face as they're sort of like dealing with that societal pressure. So we had all these rule sets, and then Loaded Questions was going to be almost more like a Terrence Malick, very ethereal piece where it was a lot about reflections and refractions and visceral animal touches. The next scene, for instance, of this is of a dog that's dying, and you're exploring these existential questions. So the rules of how we were going to shoot each one of these films were very distinct, and that helped me to sort of like jump from, okay, we're shooting 2 hours this scene, these are the rules. We're shooting 2 hours now the next scene, these are the rules, and that's how we navigated it.
So you had to be prepared technically with crew and gear in order to shoot any one of those scenes at any given time, back to back.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think the ones that we had to be the most prepped on was for B, just because of this lighting change. That was sort of the biggest one that we had to get right. And sometimes you also have to remind everyone be like, hey, which scene are we on again? Is it B or more? It's B. Oh, let's get the light in. Let's set it up right. So, yeah, it was a process.
I want to bounce back to the treatment for a second. I mean, when you're writing your pitch, forming an idea, how often does it hit you all at once? Like the general vision for, I think I know what this could be. Or does it sometimes not come until the end or at all?
I don't think it often, well, let me put it this way. This was a hard project because it couldn't all come at once because there were 4 different problems, 4 different films. Essentially, it became 5 that needed to be solved. And so I had to think about each one of them individually. And so, but let's treat each one of those films as a treatment unto themselves. I think oftentimes you're looking for the point of difference between what they gave you and then what you add on. And it's not just difference, it's like elevation too. Like what truly is the thing that you're adding to it that they go, oh, that was not what we had in there, and you've elevated it. And always, that's always what I'm searching for. I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about what scenes I could change for them. Like, that's not what I spend a lot of time on, because that's not really important. What's really important is the conceptual framework, the story. Like, what are you fundamentally tweaking, changing, adding, reframing for them? And that should be able to be said in a sentence, I think. You want to say that in a sentence so that when they go to their client, they're not confused by the whole script and the scene that you changed, and then they're expected to go, oh, remember that scene with the car where this was doing this? Now he's doing that. No, you're going to walk them into corners and they're not going to be able to speak clearly on your behalf, because there's always an agency trying to sell this idea to a client. So in my approach section, I spend the most time on that. And I go 1 to 2 to 3 things that they can sort of go, Solomon's going to do this and this and this. And I spend a lot of time on trying to find that unique hook and the unique angle. Sometimes it doesn't come. And then you're like, oh man, I feel a little naked putting this in, but that's creativity. You can't, it's not a slot machine where you win every time. You try your best. But
yeah, it's a pretty important section. Hey, this is who I am and this is what I think about the project, because I assume the powers that be, whoever's looking at it, is expecting that. When they open up a treatment, I'm sure they're like, okay, this is coming from a very passionate person who wants to, put themselves into it. And I think your idea of very clearly stating what that is up front, I think is really smart.
And I think it's 2 things. It's like point of view. So who are you and how are you connected to the work? And then maybe 3 things. Point of view, the specific insight, and then the clarity of that insight. Because the insight may be there, but it's getting lost by raising too many other things to importance. And so it's like, you want to go, this is who I am, this is how I'm connected to the work, this is the thing that I'm doing with the work, and here it is very clearly one line. You can take it to your client and sell that as my thing. I used to just write in the beginning, and I'm like, wow, why am I losing? I thought I made the script so much better. But it got lost in the script. They needed to understand it somewhere in the approach, very clearly under a heading. This is what he's offering, and this is how he's connected to it. And here it is very clearly.
Yeah, especially when your treatment is 64 pages long. I imagine it's easy to get lost.
Exactly. You just want that to be clear. So this one was more tricky. I knew that maybe the biggest thing that's going to help me with this one is sort of my personal point of view, and then I'm going to have to write the approach for 4 different films, so I have to treat all of them very differently because they're not the same. But the through line through which all those films are going to be funneled is something very personal to me, because maybe there's a lot of people that sit in this space, but particularly for what this is trying to communicate, I maybe sit in quite a unique place where I feel like I understand the critique of culture, but I also understand the critique of religion and the American church industrial complex in America. There's a very strong tension there, and this campaign wasn't saying that like the American church industrial complex is amazing, and like I had to really acknowledge in my treatment, like if we're gonna sell that, that's not what I'm interested in really, because I think there's the American industrial church complex falls into consumerism as well. It's equally as guilty. So I'm not going to do anything that's going to try and sugarcoat that. You know what I mean? Even in my own personal work, there's a film that I'm working on called Iconoclast. That's really that wrestle. And I didn't think I would ever get the opportunity to sort of, and maybe I haven't yet. Maybe it's really, you can only do it in personal work where you can wrestle really with those two sides of like wanting to be something in the world, and you're driven the Marty Supreme dream of dreaming big, but also wrestling with like what happens when that dream doesn't succeed and you've sold everything in order to make the dream a reality. I love being in that tension, and exploring ideas that exist in that tension.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just turned 40. I know enough about you to know that you're not one to live your life passively or without aim. You're a man of intention, right. Solomon. How has turning 40 felt to you?
Sore on the body. I won't lie. Maybe the mind gets sharper, becomes more resilient. You hopefully grow with wisdom and don't lose your childlike wonder. But the body definitely takes a hit. But I'm grateful. I'm very grateful that I'm in general good health. But there's definitely I definitely feel a sharper focus, and I think everyone in my family would say, just slow down, Solomon, you're 40, that's okay. Like, because I'm like, oh, okay, now I want to just make the film. I don't want to do any commercials right now. I don't want to do any music videos. I just want to make the movie. But I've also tried to make the films, and I think sometimes a posture of surrender is something that I'm, continually learning to become comfortable with. Like, the world out there says, I'm going to say it again, the world out there says, like, you got to Marty Supreme everything, but actually it's not always possible. Sometimes you have to surrender because there are things so out of your control. And that's a hard lesson to learn.
100%. I mean, I just turned 34 and I already feel like the clock is just racing. It's racing, dude. And I'm having to, it's so hard for me to just be present right now, if I'm honest with you. Just because I feel like things are moving faster than they ever have. But I think it's really good to find time to, meditation, whatever it is for you, to kind of be present and to not need to accomplish everything you want to accomplish in order to be happy. I mean, we're getting deep here, but yeah.
No, that's it. I mean, that's the idea of some of these films, you know, like just be content. It's hard to say, but actually the action of switching off and turning things away like that, restraint is that's such an important action. We all know it. I mean, it's actually hard to talk about because we're so guilty all the time, but
yeah. Back to the film industry, what do you think is overrated right now in the film industry in particular?
If I look at all the stuff that's like getting hyped up on Instagram and those places, it's really heavy cutting, fast moving, contrast, super high contrast, a lot of black and white, and then color, and it's cool. And a lot of that stuff is like edging also on like AI doing a lot of that as well. But I haven't been moved yet by it. Like I've seen cool stuff, but I haven't been moved. I haven't shed a tear for anything that AI has created yet. So I don't know. I mean, move me and maybe it changes the conversation. But if you're not going to move me, if everything's just going to be cool, I've seen that. I'm seeing it all the time. I want to be moved. I watched Hamnet and I was destroyed. And you don't make that with AI. You don't make Hamnet with AI. So,
yeah, cool imagery. I mean, you and I are in the business of creating, fostering, elevating, understanding, breaking apart cool imagery. You know, and I think maybe it's just because I'm me in my position, but you get fatigued with it. And it's not just because you see the same thing over and over. It's just because you see a blip, a spark, a very quick moment of something that looks really cool, and then it's gone. And I have zero time to understand or to live into what is trying to be conveyed, you know. And maybe we're just talking about the commercial world here now, but I'm with you. Fatigue is setting in, and I think it will set in as our access to unbelievable imagery becomes more and more attainable.
Yeah, it necessitates point of view, right? Like it necessitates people to tell a story, to tap into something. I actually really like when imagery isn't perfect. Like I really do love when lighting isn't perfect, but the story is transcending those imperfections. And oftentimes I actually think some directors need to consciously destroy their image in order for the story that's underneath to really shine through. Otherwise, the story underneath doesn't shine through. The images are doing all the shining. And so, like Derek Cianfrance, I think legitimately breaks his frames, makes them ugly. Not ugly, like they're beautiful, they're like close-ups and it's human faces, but they're not these like beautiful paintings. They're humanist. And I honestly love that. I love Cianfrance. Like I love his commitment to raw, authentic humanity, like anti-AI. I mean, I'm not anti-AI. I feel like I am, but I'm also in this space. It's this carnal, spiritual wrestling that we're all fighting the whole time. But I know my work is at its best when it's as analog as possible. But I'm not immune to the quick fix of AI for a writing idea, or I wish I was.
It's a great tool in certain ways, but when it comes to generating images, I think it's not necessarily the thing that's going to stand the test of time. That's my opinion. This might be the same question, but what's underrated in the film industry?
What is underrated? You know what? You're asking me, so my point of view is going to be unique, right? So I can't answer that objectively. But I wonder if films like Stalker or Andrei Rublev, like Tarkovsky's films, will ever be made again and will connect in the way that they have. I don't know how well they connected at the time in which they were made, but they move me so deeply. I just watched Andrei Rublev, which is a very sort of inaccessible film, I'll admit, but because there's no, it's not titillating. It doesn't create a high, but it's a film that washes over you. It's the same thing with Stalker. It's to some extent the same thing with 2001. It's the same thing with the Decalogue films. Like, I believe that good films I can watch many times. Great films I can watch once, and then they have an aftertaste. They have a long aftertaste. They stay with you. They embed themselves in you. You're mulling them over and over again, and they're often very spiritual films. And I wonder if the appetite for making those films will return. I think Chloe Zhao's film Hamnet touches on that. It was an amazing film. Sound of Metal had me in that same space again, and those are the films I want to make. I
totally. Yeah. And here's the thing: like, those films will never go anywhere. We will always have those films. I just wonder if they will become more and more niche. Like, sit down with a niece or nephew, right, who's had their head on the phone 24/7 since the day they were born, and then expect them to get anything out of that. That's tough.
So
you're right.
Here's my take is, and it's maybe a bad take, but the real will never be mainstream again. It'll be niche.
What do you mean,
like,
the real?
Okay, so you know how we consume fast food? Like, fast food, it's so easy for us to consume. Most people don't go out to enjoy a Michelin star restaurant meal. They don't have the means. They don't have the time. They don't have the capacity. And so what do we all mostly settle for? We settle for fast food. It's quick. It's easy. It's not good for us, but that's just the way it is. If you look at film, if you look at analog, if you look at cassettes, all these things that are like beautiful, they move us, there's something, analog, they are analog. But I think AI will become fast food and real will become the niche craft. So it's a very cynical take.
No, dude, that's how I feel, but honestly.
That's how I feel, yeah. The real will never be mainstream again, sadly.
Well, Salomon, thanks so much, dude.
Pleasure, brother. Hope that was helpful.
Ever wonder how top directors make treatments like these? There's a few ways, but an important one is showing the right reference images. And I don't mean what you can search for in a web browser or screen capture on your phone. Finding those absolutely perfect reference images, in my opinion, is made easiest with FrameSet. Skip the painful, messy, time-consuming search process. They've got tools for that. It will cost you nothing to get started, so try it out.